Hello everyone, welcome to The Frontiers. Today we're trying something a little bit different from the rest of the channel's content, which is 90% unscripted gameplay commentary videos, and thus I present to you a Stellaris review. However, before we get to the actual game, let's talk a little bit about the formal stuff. I'm talking of course about the scores and ratings. There's currently a popular trend on YouTube in making game reviews without scores, less formal, first impression type, and so on. I understand, of course, that this allows the reviewer to communicate with the player on a closer level, and some people even prefer these kind of reviews and do not trust the more standard ones. As I'm more of a fan of an older meta, if you wish, where reviewers gave actual scores to games and their components, I will be doing exactly that in my reviews. The scale is a standard 1 to 10, where 1 equals a terrible mistake that no self-respecting developer will ever be proud of, and 10 implies a masterpiece, revolutionizing the game industry. However, unlike many reviewers that do give out scores, average does not mean a 7 or 8 out of 10. I'm looking at you, IGN. Average is a 5. Above average, 6. Good, 7. Excellent, 8. A new hit, leader of the genre, 9. On the other side, 4 below average, 3 bad, 2 awful. Obviously, all of these ratings are only true unless stated otherwise, and as with anything, I do expect exceptions to occur. I will be rating the game based on a few topics which I'll structure the whole video around. Concept, gameplay, story and writing, sounds and music, visual representation, and user experience. While most of these are pretty self-explanatory, last one is not really. Every part of the game matters. However, the user experience can easily make or break it. How immersive is the well-written world? Are the amazing sound effects really well placed? Visuals are stunning, but do they feel out of this game? In the end, this serves as a conclusion, a sign of how well the game ties everything together, and a good way to round up the review, provide final thoughts and the overall score. With this out of the way, let's finally move on to the review. Paradox Interactive, the developer of Stellaris, is famous for their games in a self-invented genre called grand strategy games. Titles like Crusader Kings 2 and Europa Universalis 4 really brought the studio forward and gained recognition and fame for its creators. The closest genre comparison for these games is the 4X genre: explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate. It is clear that a grand strategy set in space would have to be a blend of the two. And that is exactly what Stellaris is in its core concept. This is a great idea, and ever since the announcement, it caught the eye of the most Paradox fans. Not only these, as such concept invites many players not particularly familiar with the grand strategy, but well-versed in 4X titles. However, this isn't necessarily a new word as new gaming as a whole. In many ways, this has already been done in games such as Galactic Civilization, Sins of the Solar Empire, and of course, Master of Orion series. As such, the concept gets an 8 out of 10. Now let's talk about how well this concept is implemented. All players begin in the same starting position. One planet, a few military ships, a scout, a worker. The difference comes from the pre-designed species features the players have selected, or in case of the AI, randomly generated. Early game will mostly feature 4X elements. You explore your randomly generated galaxy, expand by colonizing worlds available to your species, exploit your planets and areas to maximum efficiency, and finally, the early game ends because you've discovered a few alien empires. This is where the grand strategy begins. As eventually most of the territories claimed by various empires, at some point the map turns into something resembling Europa Universalis 4 map, with nations of various sizes and fleets, technological levels, population numbers, and so on. Expansion, if that's what you're after, becomes only possible through conquest of your neighbors. Those who wish to engage more in diplomacy will be both pleased and disappointed. The game offers more in the way of various offers and deals. Players can form alliances and federations, and so can the AI, which is a lot more than the most 4X games can offer. However, the diplomatic complexity and intrigue from other Paradox grand strategy titles just isn't there. Technology and research is one of the best features of the game. instead of following the standard tech tree formula, the research is also randomly generated in a way. There are three main branches of research: physics, society, and engineering. Whenever you start a new research, the game offers you a selection of few technologies currently available on the list. You cannot freely choose any tech you want, only out of this selection. Once you're done with the research, the cycle repeats. This means that there is no best research order, as the technologies you get are randomly sampled from the pool of those available to you. Of course, many technologies are unavailable unless you research as prerequisites. You can't research battleships if you didn't research cruisers yet. A few words about these and military in general. There are four classes of military ships: corvettes, destroyers, cruisers, and battleships. Corvettes are small and agile, and you cannot put large weapons on them. Destroyers are a bit bigger, but less evasive, however you can already outfit them with a large gun. Cruisers are basically two destroyers strapped together. And finally, battleship is the core of any fleet. Healthy, with tons of armor, capable of carrying heavy weaponry and combat aura generators. However, they are not so good at evasive maneuvers. Ships are composed into and controlled via fleets. One admiral may be assigned to each fleet, which improves the stats of that fleet, like fire rate and different other traits. Fleets engage in space combat, with corvettes at the front, destroyers in the second row, cruisers behind them, and battleships in tow. Once you're done crushing the enemy space forces, you can use ground armies of various types, including xenomorph monsters and giants, to capture and secure enemy planets. War is done in the paradox style. You don't actually control any captured territory until you sign a peace treaty with the other side. The end goal of the game is not exactly set, allowing players to do as they will. However, if you control 40% of all colonizable worlds in the galaxy, or there are no other independent empires left, federations don't count, the player is victorious. Although, of course, you may continue to play if you so wish. There are many other gameplay features in the game, such as the ship designer, which allows you to design your own custom ships and their designs depending on what you want from your fleet. Fallen empires, which are special AI entities, anomalies which you can randomly find during exploring, random events tied into anomalies and colonization, crisis, and so on and so forth. In fact, there are so many of them that I will not be covering it all in this review, instead letting you to discover it for yourself. Instead, let's talk a little bit about the downsides. A few main downsides to the gameplay are the amount of bugs, broken and lackluster content, sometimes irritating AI and AI decisions, not really well balanced ship types, and the lack of flavor. Even considering that in comparison to other Paradox titles, this one has had a very, very low amount of bugs, and most of the great game-breaking ones were fixed within the first week, the amount of bugs is still pretty noticeable. As of patch 1.1, this issue is not as important, however, sometimes it is still problematic. By lackluster or broken content, I mean that after a certain point, the game itself does not have very much to offer. Players do the do, following their own goals and fighting AI opponents, however very little happens even compared to other grand strategy titles. In EU4, players are bombarded with events constantly, improving their immersion with the world and the country they are controlling. In Stellaris, once you run out of systems to explore and find anomalies in, you will receive close to no events. The only late-game change that I have seen in more than 100 hours spent with the end-game crisis, which are not really satisfying or well-polished, and a certain other change that I will not spoil, although I will say that it is bound to genetic modification in a way. The game interface is another plus and pro and con in the same time. While being fairly intuitive and for the most part efficient, there are definitely improvements that can be done. Of course, this and many other issues with the gameplay will be addressed with further patches, but as of 1.1, despite definite improvements, there are still problems. All in all, gameplay gets 7 out of 10 without the patches. and a preemptive 9 out of 10 in a few years, with the patches and expansions coming along. Story in a game such as Stellaris is not exactly something to really judge on. The player is the one to make a story. However, the bits that are represented are very well done. Anomaly events, pre-scripted species, even tooltips are pretty damn well written, and are filled to the brim with references and sometimes jokes. Not really much to say about this one. It deserves a 7 out of 10. Not a huge part of the game, but overall fits pretty well. Really big part of any game, in Stellaris both sound and music are masterfully executed. Sounds, not so. They are placed where you expect the sound to be, and they do fit the style and visuals. Nothing particularly outstanding, however. The music is written by Andreas Waldertoft, who is already known for his soundtracks for other Paradox games. In fact, you've been listening to it this entire time. The soundtrack puts players in a great mood for playing, exploring, conquering, researching, and so on and so forth, and does not get boring even after a long time. I'm going to rate it 8 out of 10. As with the sound and music, a big part of any game is the visual representation. Paradox Interactive are getting better and better at handling the visuals using their already rather aged Clausewitz game engine, and this time they've stepped up quite a bit. Pseudo 3D space, which they went with, looks amazing. Species are using various ship types, which can be modded, and combat looks very pleasing to the eye, with each weapon having its own visual effects and graphics. However, there could still be more diversity in the ship look, as two reptilian empires flying the reptilian ship types will have the absolute exact same looking fleets, even though they've spawned on two opposite sides of the galaxy. Quite a coincidence, don't you think? Because of that, the visual representation gets a 7 out of 10. In this final part of the review, I'm going to talk about how well the game is tied together. Again, I must say this. Despite the fact that none of the other parts that I've talked about suggest that the game is anything spectacular, with 7s and 8s across the board, which, good and excellent scores, they don't say much about whether or not you should play the game yourself. It already has taken more than 100 hours away from me. Why do I continue playing it? Because in this game, I can let my imagination free to make up my own rules as I go. Something straight out of childhood. Remember when you were playing with the other kids in the sandbox, making sandcastles, putting your toys there, battling with others' toys, all this makeshift childhood diplomacy, rivalries and friendships, made up stories, worlds. This is what Stellaris references. At least in my case it does. I don't care that the Paradox games, and in particular Stellaris, can be exploited in various ways to min-max, and the players can outsmart and destroy any opposition, and there are prevalent strategies that are just so much better than the others. I don't try to blow up as much as possible every game, quickly overwhelming my opponents and then complaining that the game has no challenge. I'm a proud Grand Consul of the Ecstatic Republic, leader and founder of the Galactic Harmonious Compact, which strives to unite the galaxy under its banner in the quest to end all conflict. I am the voice of the Foundation, part of one entity, preparing the coming of the new overlords, the sacred androids, superior beings to flesh. I am the God Emperor of the Solar Imperium, absolute ruler and a despotic, xenophobic tyrant. In Stellaris, anything you do has the meaning you want to give it. Would my species or my nation declare war on the neighbor if it needs resources? How easily would you do that? Do we accept genetic enhancement? How do we deal with native species? You get to decide. You get to set up your own rules. If you want to min-max, sure. The game offers you plenty of things to min-max. But I feel as if that is not exactly the way Stellaris, or any Paradox game for that matter, is meant to be played. it is all about the enjoyment and experience you get. I may choose an unfavorable option efficiency-wise, but if it fits better into my species' ideals and ethics, I will do so. In conclusion, I am rating user experience in Stellaris, as well as the entire game, with a 9 out of 10. It is most definitely a new word in the genres of crime strategy and 4X both, with great potential, as Paradox has already shown they do not abandon the games upon release, and I would recommend the game to anyone even remotely interested in strategy games and space thematic. Visuals fit really well with the gameplay, and the music fits really well with the visuals. That's all for today. If you made it to this point though, I would like to thank you for watching the video. Suggest to leave a rating down below the video, and leave a comment if you think I should make more videos in this format, and what could I improve, because there's obviously things to improve. I have a few other games I would like to review in a similar fashion, but for now, have a good day.